All right, everyone, welcome back. So, today we're starting a new series that we're going to do at the end of each season where GMs have their first rookie year essentially in the NHL. And we're going to go through and review each general manager's first year. So, we got Danny Briere here today, starting off with the Philadelphia Flyers. So, Briere was hired on March 10th, 2023, following the trade deadline. Now, he was actually the GM for a little bit in terms of when it was in the 22-23 season. So I do have that number in here, but he didn't become the GM until I think after the season was over, and then eventually was promoted to, I think, president of hockey, or I think he was promoted to hockey operations, something of that resort. And then they also hired Keith Jones too later on. So that added into this new regime of Briere, Jones, Tortorella. That was the new outlook of the team. Now, in 22-23, they started out with Chuck Fletcher. I think they had someone else in the president of hockey operations, but they started out with Chuck Fletcher as the GM. They went 31, 38, and 13 for 75 points. They were 26th in the NHL. They obviously drafted at 7th overall in that draft, and that is when Briere had his control in the draft. So that's 22-23. When you look at 23-24, it was a way better year. They went 38, 33, and 11 for 87 points. They finished 21st in the NHL. And 21st is a bit of an understatement. Yes, they did finish outside of the top 20. But they were tied with a lot of those teams in that log jam to make the playoffs. So they really didn't finish that far out. I think they only had like 2 points less than Washington, or maybe 3 points less. So they finished just barely out of it. And I don't really want to go into the collapse or, how the team, they didn't have hard work. Like that is Tortorella. I think the collapse and everything is Tortorella. I do want to talk about Briere though, and the moves he's made. So it started out with the Ivan Provorov trade. That was the first move where Briere really solidified himself as saying, yes, I am the GM of this team, and we're going to try and tear this down a little bit. So they traded Ivan Provorov to the Columbus Blue Jackets with 30% retained in a three-way deal with the Kings, where the Kings actually got Kevin Connauton, Hayden Hodgson, and then Philadelphia got Cal Peterson, Sean Walker, Helge Grant, and a 2023 first, which became Oliver Bonk. So Provorov, I have said in videos a lot last year when he got traded, I said that I didn't like Provorov. I wasn't into Provorov's defensive style. Now, I feel a little bit depressed now that he's left because I have no one else to hate on. But regardless, Provorov definitely, they needed to get him out of there. He doesn't have the best contract in the world either. So I thought that was a good move by Danny. As for the people that LA got from Philly, I wasn't too big on Connauton. I wasn't too big on Hodgson. Those guys were players from the Chuck Fletcher regime, so I was fine with moving on from them. The guys they got in return though, Philadelphia, they made out very well. They got Cal Peterson, which yes, Peterson is not great. Peterson is not a great goalie. He's good in the American Hockey League, but he is not an NHL caliber goaltender. There is actually a pretty good chance that his contract could get bought out by Philly this offseason. There is a good chance. He's probably at the top of the list for potential buyout candidates, but regardless, they got Sean Walker, which later on they flipped Walker for a first-round pick. We'll get into that in a little bit here. But Walker proved to be a really solid, good defensive defenseman, something that Philadelphia has lacked for years, in fact. And then they also got Helge Grant, which is a good B-level prospect developing with the Phantoms right now in their Calder Cup push. And then they obviously got a first-round pick, which is Oliver Bonk. So Bonk looks like he's going to be a solid defenseman. I'll get into his draft picks a little bit later. But Bonk's looking like an exciting player. So later on in the offseason, and they made noise the whole offseason, whether it's drafting Michkov, whether it's making offseason trades, they made a lot of noise. Now, the Kevin Hayes trade was really built to be a lot more than what it actually turned into, but it turned out that Torrey Krug, a guy we were actually going to end up getting in that deal, turned it down, so it only turned into a Kevin Hayes contract. And it looked like there was a chance that we were going to get Jordan Kyrou with Torrey Krug coming over too. We were going to flip Travis Sanheim over as well. It could have been a massive trade, and it's really something to think about. Imagine where this team would be had we made that trade a year ago. This team would be in such a different spot. But the trade that ended up happening was Kevin Hayes with 50% retained for a 6th-round pick in 2024. I was disappointed, and I said that in videos on this channel. I said I was disappointed because I figured we were going to get more. We were told we were going to get more, but at the end of things and up to now, I'm fine with it, to be honest. I think we needed to get rid of Hayes as it is. So in terms of free agency and signings, we'll get into the draft picks in a little bit. That's at the end of this video. So signings. He signed Ryan Poehling to a $1.4 million contract. He would later re-sign Poehling to a 2-year, $1.9 million contract. That was a great signing. He was a good third liner. He's played awesome in Philadelphia that last season, and hopefully the 2-year contract he's on will be better for him. Garnet Hathaway to a 2-year, $2.375 million deal. I have a close friend of mine who is very high on Hathaway, and I think that, and I agree with him. I think Hathaway's been awesome this year. He creates a lot of plays, is a physical player, and is a guy that can generate chances, and is underrated for that reason. Mark Stahl, 1-year, $1.1 million deal. Stahl was okay. I mean, he had his moments, but he wasn't terrible. I do think, though, that they're probably going to let him go this offseason, but that's a discussion for another time. They signed Victor Mete to a 1-year, $775K deal. He's an American Hockey League player. And then as well as that too, Rhett Gardner to a 2-year, $775K deal. So both AHL players. So honestly, the signings I thought above all were great. I thought they made the right moves. I thought they made the right signings. We'll see what happens this coming offseason, but I think this year was the right move when it came to signings. In terms of re-signings, guys, they re-signed midway through the season. Now, Briere did a lot of work when it came to re-signing players throughout the season. He signed Cam York to a 2-year, $1.6 million deal. That Cam York contract is great. That contract is awesome. I love the York deal. Noah Cates to a 2-year, $2.65 million deal. One of the better two-way centers on this team, and he's been awesome this year. Morgan Frost to a 2-year, $2.1. Frost had his issues at the beginning of the year with Philadelphia, but he definitely turned it around, so I think he's deserving of that contract. Samuel Ersson to a 2-year, $1.45 million contract. I thought that was a good deal too. I like the Ersson contract a lot. Nick Seeler to a 4-year, $2.7 million deal. Seeler's had a really good season, so I think he's deserving of that. And then he also signed Owen Tippett to an 8-year, $6.2 million deal, which I also like as a contract overall. So, above all, I think all the signings were solid. I think maybe you could argue the Tippett deal was not great, but apart from that, everything was good. So I got one more thing about signings before we move into the other stuff. We got entry-level contracts. These were guys that were signed to ELC since Briere was hired, and some of them haven't played yet in the NHL. Some of them have been playing in the AHL, but still, I like almost all of these. You got Alexei Kolosov, Alexis Gendron, Oliver Bonk, Denver Barkey, Hunter McDonald, Massimo Rizzo, Emil Andre, and Ivan Fedotov. Those were the contracts that were signed. Now, I know Fedotov was re-signed later on. I don't have that in here. But I like all of those. I like all of those guys. I think this is a part of the young core that's coming in, highlighted by Matvei Michkov. Hopefully he will come over soon. That's a whole discussion for another time. But I do like the entry-level contracts that Briere has brought out, and I think that definitely some of them are going to hit next season. Like when we get Massimo Rizzo and Denver Barkey into the lineup, man, I'm excited for that. I'm very excited for that. So you're probably wondering when I'm going to talk about it, but the Cutter Gauthier situation is definitely something that was highlighted in this season by the Flyers and by Dana Briere. He was traded over to Anaheim for Jamie Drysdale and a 2025 second-round pick. Now, we'll go into the trade here first before I go into what else happened, but I like Drysdale, a good right-shot defenseman. You don't see those very often. He's a guy that I think in terms of like something we need, I feel like we would need a guy like Drysdale more than we need Cutter Gauthier. People won't like that. I understand that. Would I have preferred Gauthier over Drysdale? Sure, but I feel like in the long term we need defense. We need defense. Like our defense improved drastically this year, but before this year it was not great. So definitely, I think that getting a right shot defenseman like Drysdale definitely helps. In terms of just like everything else that happened, obviously Gauthier won World Junior MVP, had an amazing 2024 World Juniors. He also won gold, and then a few days later he was traded. So what we heard in the developing days after, this was a pretty insane time for me. I made videos on the channel. One of them is like one of the most popular in the history of the channel, but in terms of that, like Briere, Jones, and Patrick Sharp went over to Sweden to go talk to Cutter, and Cutter never talked to him. So I give Briere a lot of credit for trying. He was given a pretty bad hand with a player he didn't get drafted by. I know you can bring up the things of not letting him play and such and all that, but I do think that overall they handled the situation very well, and I think that with ways I've seen it handled before with other organizations or even the Flyers themselves, I think they did a good job with handling that. So the trade deadline, those are things that you want to get into as well. The deadline trades were interesting. They started off with the Sean Walker trade to Colorado. They traded Sean Walker and a 2026 fifth to the Avalanche in exchange for Ryan Johansson and a 2025 first. So the fact that they got a first for Walker was awesome. First off, I was very happy when they got a first. I was thrilled, over the moon, and I love it. I was saying a lot in videos that I feel like we could have gotten a first for Walker. We damn near did. We did. Ryan Johansson had issues with Cutter. I think that was part of it. They waived him as soon as they got him. I think when they saw that they were getting him, they're like, "Oh, this guy knows Cutter Gauthier. Nah, we good." But that's a whole thing that we could get into. But I think that Briere won that trade. I think he did win that trade. I think in terms of the other ones too, I think he did as well. You could argue the Gauthier trade's a loss, but like really in that situation, what are you gonna do? Like I gotta be honest. They retained the Noah Hanifin deal, which I thought was weird. They got a 5th round pick in return. I was like, why? Why are you using up a retention slot for the Hanifin trade? But I guess they wanted a 5th round pick. I was like, all right, that's fine with me, I guess. Then they made 2 more trades on deadline day where they acquired Eric Johnson from Buffalo for a 2024 4th. I would imagine Johnson leaves. I cannot see a world where we keep Eric Johnson on our defense. I didn't like that at all when we acquired him. And then we made a 1-for-1 deal where we traded Wade Allison to the Predators in exchange for Dennis Gurianov. Gurianov, I think, played like 3 games. Didn't look great, so I think the expectation is we're going to move on from him. But that was it. I understand you're going to factor the collapse into what you think of Briere right now. I understand that on level. But again, I don't think that's fully his fault. This team, and I'll go into it when I make my other videos for the Flyers. This definitely won't be the last one. But in terms of just like the team, they worked hard the whole year. They played a style of hockey that is hard to play over an 82-game season, and they just collapsed at the end of the year. It really sucked, and it was really painful for me. I'm surprised I didn't even make a video ranting about it on here, but it happens. It is what it is. And it showed to me that I thought we were gaslighted a little bit by the start of the season, and I didn't think this team was ready. I still don't think they're ready. I don't think they're a playoff team next year. I don't. I think they could finish 6th for sure. I think they could be a competitive team, but they won't make the playoffs. I don't think they're there yet. I just don't see it. But is that Briere's fault? No, I don't think that's Briere's fault whatsoever. So in terms of draft picks, the only draft he's done is the 2023 draft. He made a pretty hefty load of picks. With that being said, so at 7th overall, they drafted Matvei Michkov. Michkov was argued to be dropped in this. A lot of people were scared by the Russian looming Ukraine war when that was going on. Well, it still is going on, but a year ago was way more tense. Well, it still is. They were really concerned about the Ukraine war, and Michkov, in terms of that, like, people passed on him. Teams passed on him. Like, that was something that definitely people were thinking about, but Briere took the chance. Briere looked at this and said that, yeah, we aren't a playoff team. We obviously were kind of wrong because we came closer than we thought we were going to be, but Briere knew the expectation that we were not a playoff team. So I was fine with picking Michkov because by the time Michkov comes over, we'll be ready to make the playoffs. And having an entry-level contract in the playoffs for a guy like him could be insanely clutch. So as well as that too, they acquired Oliver Bonk at 22nd overall. Bonk is looking like a very good top 4 defenseman. He's looking like if he keeps developing the way he is, he could be that player for us. They drafted Carson Bjarnason as a guy who's playing, I think, in the WHL. He's played games in the AHL, but I think he's playing in the WHL currently. You got Igor Zavaragan. I don't know that guy too well, but I think he's a solid forward. Denver Barkey, I'm excited to come over for him. That could be a steal because he's been really good this year with London. I know he's got a year of development in the American Hockey League, but I think that Barkey could be a steal looking forward in that draft. Cole Nubble as well, drafted 103rd overall. Don't know too much about him. Alex Siernik, he's playing over in, I think, Czechia or Russia, one of the two. And he's looked good. Carter Sotheran, don't know too much about him. Same with Ryan McPherson. And then Mateo Mann's actually playing for the ECHL Reading Royals. So that's something you can take with what you will. So yeah, those are all the draft picks for last year's draft, and that was year one at Briere and his drafting. In terms of other things that happened, Couturier was named captain. I know there's a whole situation with that, and I'll get into that in another video. I'm telling you, as a Flyers fan and how crazy this year was, I can make like at least 4 videos before the draft on Philly. I probably will, but we'll obviously see there what actually I talk about. So the Couturier captain situation happened. The D'Angelo trade actually fell through. People forget that happened. They were going to trade for D'Angelo. They eventually just never ended up doing that. They bought him out. The Michkov talk was a whole conversation too with the things going on in Russia. And obviously, is he ever going to come over? That's been something that happened too. Tortorella obviously made a lot of headlines this year. I think with the team being good, Tortorella was criticized a lot for some moves, like sending down Bobby Brink, Couturier with the finger, Morgan Frost early on in the season. There's a lot of situations there with Tortorella that I could go into as well. That could be a separate video. So if you want to see that, let me know down below. And then obviously too, the Cutter situation was one of the bigger ones. That was a huge headline in January. That was huge. So those are all the things that happened with Danny Briere. As far as I know, I think that's everything that's happened. Now, if you're looking towards the future, I don't have anything for that. I'll do my 2024 review for the Flyers in probably 2 weeks. But overall, I got to give him an A. I feel like he did a good job with the situation that he had. There really isn't a move here that I was like, really? Like maybe the Eric Johnson trade, but that really doesn't affect us that bad in the long term. There were other situations too. Like I thought that the Cutter thing really sucked, but I really did think he handled it well. But yeah, I give him an A. I think he did a good job. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on Danny Briere's tenure as the Flyers GM. A nice little longer video here for you guys. I really enjoyed talking about Briere and the Flyers. This was like a whole discussion. This is like the first year in such a long time that I've actually really enjoyed hockey. Because I enjoy watching hockey. I enjoy making videos, but I kind of tuned it out a little bit when it came to talking about the Flyers and stuff. But this year I really enjoyed with them being good for the majority of the year. So let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed me, I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed down below. I'm getting better at that. But anyways, we got other GMs we got to do like Conroy, Trotz, Dubas, and Tree Living. So plenty more to come your way. But regardless, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.